Hello, family. I want to talk about the last days and what is really happening in the last days. And I want to bring it out of the book of Jubilees in the Sefer Scrolls. And this is going to give you more of a clear understanding that you're not going to get on the news. You're not going to get with some of these people that call themselves prophets and prophetess. And even some pastors in the church are not even preaching or teaching about this because their focus is not on the word. Their focus is getting you distracted and get you so religified that the rapture is going to happen and you won't have to worry about any of that because you're going to be in glory. Well, all that is not true, but this is not what I'm talking to you about. I want to talk to you about what is happening now in this generation that you and I are both living in and what is soon to come. And I want to specifically talk to Israel because the world is waiting on the children of Israel. Yes, the world is waiting on this because we are Yahuwah's chosen people. We are a royal priesthood. We're supposed to be a holy nation. So he's waiting for his people to waken up. That's the reason why Yahushua came. He came for the lost sheep of Israel, those that had been scattered in the four corners of the world that is now serving other nations, pagan gods, their traditions, their culture, their foods, everything. He came to those lost children, and the disciples went out to preach to and bring in those children that have been lost, that didn't know who Yahuwah was, didn't know who the God of Israel was. And even 2 centuries that has passed down up to me, I didn't even know. You know, I knew he wasn't white, but I didn't know who he was. And I've been studying him. And in my transparency, Yahuwah has been teaching me and showing me his word. And I want to teach you something that just hit me this morning as I was reading out the book of Jubilees. Now I'm going to give you a little backstory to chapter 23. And it talks about when Abraham was about to die. He loved Jacob. And it says that. He said he loved Jacob because Jacob always wanted to hear about Yahuwah. And he was teachable. And he saw the anointing on Jacob, but Esau didn't want to have nothing to do with it. Esau didn't want to have nothing to do with Yahuwah. He liked hunting. He liked being in the wilderness. And it says Isaac loved Esau, but Abraham and Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, in his last days, Abraham was blessing Jacob, and he had Jacob in his bosom, laying down because he had brought Isaac and Ishmael, his other son, and then he brought his 6 other sons from Keturah into his house, and then he also brought in Esau and Jacob, but Esau was out hunting. But Jacob had a strong bond with Abraham, and as Abraham was dying, he had Jacob lay on his bosom, on his chest, and he started to bless him and talk to him and telling him not to marry those Canaanite women. He just spoke into him and told him everything that he was not supposed to do. Okay? And it talks about in chapter 23, it says in verse 8, it says, and he lived 3 jubilees and 4 weeks of years, 175 years, and completed the days of life, being old and full of days. Now, the word says that we were supposed to live long if we were obedient to Yahuwah and follow his commandments. And the word talks about how it says, in verse 10, it says, for Abraham was perfect in all his deeds with Yahuwah, and well pleasing in righteousness of all the days of his life. And behold, he did not complete 4 jubilees in his life, when he had grown old, because of the wickedness and the full of his days. So in his time frame, it started getting wicked and wicked and wicked. So that's the reason why his days started decreasing of him living long. Just like now, days are being wicked and wicked. And so we're seeing people dying at, 40 and 50 and 60 and 70, or even younger than that. We're seeing people that are dying at a very young age. And it talks about in verse 11, and all the generations which shall rise from this time until the day of the great judgment shall grow old quickly before they complete 2 jubilees, and their knowledge shall forsake them by the reason of their old age, and all their knowledge shall be vanished away. That talks about in verse 11. But Yishmael, it also talks about because of the wickedness and how that the children of Israel were disobedient. Abraham is trying to explain, and he tells them that because of them not listening to what he says, that all these things were going to happen, like evil judgments and illness and snow and frost and fevers and chills and famine and deaths. He talks all the way through that, all the way to where this generation starts to get wicked. In verse 15 it says, then they shall say, the days of the forefathers were many, even unto 1,000 years, and were good. But behold, the days of our life, if a man has lived many, are 60 years and 10, and if he is strong, 80 years, and those evil, and there is no peace in the days of an evil generation. And we're not seeing peace at all in this generation. We're not seeing any of those things. And let me tell you, in verse 19, it says, and I'm still in the chapter 23, it says, and they shall strive one with another, the young with the old, and the old with the young, the poor with the rich, and the lowly with the great, and the beggar with the prince, on the account of the Torah and the covenant, for they, listen to this, have forgotten commandment and covenant and feast and months and the Sabbath and jubilees and all the judgments. It's because of the wickedness that has grown through generations to generations. We don't even know the correct calendar. We don't know the correct feast of days. We don't know all the commandments. We don't know. We have forgotten all that. And we've forgotten the Sabbath, the covenants. We have forgotten all that because of wickedness that has been increased. It also talks about, it says in verse 24, it says, matter of fact, I'll go back to verse 23. It says, he will wake up against them the sinners of other nations who have neither mercy nor compassion. Are we seeing mercy and compassion with the other nations, Israel? No, we're not. We're seeing that nobody wants to be associated with the Black Americans. Even all the other nations that's out there that are being deported, they don't want to stand with us. But now, since they're being deported out, all the other nations, they want us to stand with them, right? It says, and who shall respect the person of none, neither old nor young, nor anyone, for they are more wicked and strong to do evil than all the children of men. Listen to this. And they shall use violence against Israel and transgression against Jacob, and much blood shall be shed upon the earth, and there shall be none to gather and none to bury. You hear that? And it says, in those days they shall cry aloud, and they shall call and pray, and they may be saved from the hand of the sinners, the other nations, but none shall be saved. And the heads of our children shall be white with gray hair, and a child of 3 weeks old shall appear like an old man of 100 years, and their stature shall be destroyed by tribulation and oppression. You seeing that? As time gets wicked, we're going to see our younger kids looking gray-haired and old. Even a 3-week-old is going to look like 100 years old. But it says, in those days, if the children begin to study the Torah and seek the commandments and return to the path of righteousness, they shall begin to grow many and increase among those children, and they shall draw nigh to 1,000 years, and a great number of years than before we number of days. That means when we go back to doing the Torah, go back to being obedience, following his instructions, doing what Yahuwah tells us to do, it says we will look younger. We'll look like we're in our 20s. We will live to 1,000 years. Our hair will grow long. Our body will be strong like a 15, a 16, 20-year-old. We will age back in time when you follow the word of the Torah.